and you're going through binge eating disorder right now, I think the thing that you're fearing the most is going to be the thing that's actually going to cure this problem for you. What's up, guys? Today I wanted to make a video and talk about my personal experience with binge eating disorder. For those who are unaware, binge eating disorder is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It is an eating disorder in which you uncontrollably eat food at a pace or at a volume that is, as I mentioned, it's not something that you can control. You're binge eating. You can't stop. It's something that I have a personal experience with. Was really a big, like a dark cloud that I dealt with for a long time, for lack of a better term, and it really kind of disrupted the quality of my life for a little bit there. So what I wanted to do today was kind of share with you guys how I developed binge eating disorder, what it was actually like to kind of go through a phase of binge eating disorder, and then actually how I overcame that. And am now completely free of binge eating disorder. First things first, I made a video recently talking about my personal experience with DNP. In that video, I mentioned that over the course of about 18 months, I had a substantial weight loss. I had lost over 100 pounds in about a year and a half, somewhere in there, because I took some breaks in between. But over the course of 18 months, my body weight dropped over 100 pounds. So if you haven't seen that video, then I recommend that you go back and watch it, just simply for that little blurb there, so you can kind of understand the mindset that I was in when I was dealing with this. When I look back at that 100-pound weight loss, when I take a look at the chunks, I guess you could say, in which I did that, I can say with confidence that the first 80 pounds that I lost very healthily. I wasn't doing anything extreme. I was just following very basic energy principles where I was in a calorie deficit. I was eating whatever I wanted. I was doing a flexible dieting type approach. It was pretty, I don't want to say effortless, but it was pretty easy to lose that first 80 pounds. I mentioned in the DNP video that I had gotten myself to a point where I was pretty healthy, but I was mentally not satisfied. I wanted to continue to push and lose more weight because I wanted to be shredded. Like I wanted to be absolutely peeled. The last 20 pounds is really where the DNP video, binge eating disorder, that's really where a lot of these like dark events happened in my weight loss journey. And so binge eating disorder was something that I started to experience. I can't remember when the very first time that I had an episode of binge eating disorder was, but I can remember the feelings that I had when I was going through it, and it was it's super weird for people who are watching this right now, who have dealt with it or are going through it right now. You'll be able to attest that the fact that you're literally sitting there eating, and while you're eating uncontrollably, you're thinking to yourself, why the fuck am I doing this? And what's crazy is, even though your mind is telling you, I need to stop doing this, I shouldn't be doing this, this is the wrong thing to do, you physically can't stop. So it's not really something that you have physical control over. It's an extremely strange phenomenon. I went through it the first time, and I just remember thinking, wow, that was very strange. And then what ended up, becoming of that was that binging for me was usually a weekly thing for, I don't know how long I dealt with it, probably 4 to 6 months, if I had to guess. I mean, a pretty substantial amount of time. And it was happening once a week usually. It very rarely happened more than once per week, but it was also pretty rare that I would go a week without doing it. And this is going to kind of get into the main point that I want to talk about with binge eating disorder, is that binge eating disorder, in the exception of special cases, binge eating disorder is almost entirely a self-inflicted disorder. The reason why binge eating disorder happened to myself, and how it tends to happen in the fitness industry, is people go through periods of extreme deprivation where they deprive themselves of food. They deprive themselves of going out to social events and eating things that they that they can't have because they're not on their diet. I was doing that. My friends were asking me to go out to eat, and I wasn't going because I couldn't, stick to my macros. I mean, I was mentally really in it. I was really grinding to lose this last 20 pounds. And that's kind of the main point that I want to make is that depriving yourself for extended periods of time is what is inevitably going to lead to binge eating disorder. And that's exactly what happened with me. I definitely developed a binge eating disorder because in my quest to lose those last 20 pounds, I became very restrictive, very over restrictive. I was, like I mentioned, not going out with friends. I was not eating certain foods, like completely avoiding them. I was taking recreational drugs to help with my fat loss. Some drugs not recreational, as I mentioned. Completely doing anything and everything that I could to get that last 20 pounds off. And it became such a restrictive lifestyle that when I finally got a taste of something good, like I took a bite of some candy or cereal or pizza or whatever, I physically could not stop myself from eating. As I mentioned, I dealt with this for about 4 to 6 months, and it was an extremely, for lack of a better word, dark time in my life, because one of the main components that keeps the binge eating disorder cycle going is the person will binge, they will feel guilty about eating the absurd amount of food that they ate, which will then prompt them to try to do things to make up for it, which then just causes another binge, which just repeats the cycle. And that is exactly what I was doing. I would binge, I would wake up the next morning, my body weight would be up like 6 to 8 pounds or some random number. I would feel extremely guilty because one, I felt physically horrible because I just ate like a fucking asshole before I just ate a whole box of Oreos, like I feel physically terrible. And two, I knew that all of the hard work that I had done throughout the week, I had just ruined it by binge eating. So this caused an extreme amount of guilt and sadness, which would then cause me to drop calories even lower, bump cardio even more, so that I could kind of make up for the damage that I had done, which just further perpetuates this restrictive lifestyle, which just causes more emotional guilt, which causes the binge eating cycle to repeat. So this is kind of the big picture point that I kind of want to drive home. How I defeated binge eating disorder and how most people defeat binge eating disorder is loosening up on their restrictions. Now, I understand that if you're a competitive physique athlete, there are times where you can't loosen up on their restrictions, and unfortunately, binge eating disorder is just part of the sport. I wish it wasn't. There are a lot of eating disorders and things that are associated with physique sport, which is unfortunate, but it's just kind of the nature of the game. But if you're somebody who's just a recreational weightlifter or a dieter, you guys have no place following the restrictions that competitive physique athletes place on themselves. I was following those restrictions, and I was not a competitive physique athlete yet. I was just some guy going through the gym. I was not mentally and physically prepared to live that lifestyle. I am prepared to live that lifestyle. Now I am living that lifestyle daily. I follow a regimented meal plan, all that stuff. At the time, I was doing that, but I wasn't mentally 100% committed to it, but I was forcing myself to follow that lifestyle, and it was really fucking with my head emotionally, and it was causing me a lot of problems. What I would do if I could go back in time is I would be following more of a flexible dieting approach when I was in that nitty-gritty of the fat loss phase, where I was really trying to get off the last 20 pounds. That's when I tightened up the restrictions. What I should have done in that situation is just kept doing what I had been doing up until that point and following a relatively more flexible style of dieting. I think that would have definitely mentally helped me handle my cravings a little bit better and not just completely ignore them and push them to the side. As a competitive physique athlete, that is how I handle my cravings now, is I just push them to the side. At this point, I've been doing this long enough that they're not something that bothers me anymore. At that time, I was very new to the whole lifting, dieting lifestyle, that the over-restriction was not something that I was prepared for. The other thing that finally cured this problem for me was I finally gave my permission to gain weight for the first time in my life. As I had mentioned, I had been very overweight up until that point in my life. I had lost over 100 pounds. So now I'm this 150-pound, really lean kid and I want to be bigger, but I'm mentally dealing with the struggles of trying to gain weight because I don't want to go back to being the fat kid anymore. That's another video for a different day, is mentally dealing with gaining weight, because I have a lot of tips that I think that I can give you guys for that. But I won't talk about that too much today. I'll make a separate video on that. But finally, allowing myself the permission to gain weight means, to gain weight, I need to eat more calories. When you eat more calories, that opens up your options. When you're eating 1,800 calories a day, you realistically can only eat so many foods before you're eating half of your calories in one meal. When you're eating 3,500, 4,000 calories a day, you can eat a big 900 calorie meal and satisfy your cravings and still mentally know that you've got plenty of food left throughout the day, that you're not gonna starve. So finally giving myself the permission to actually gain weight and enter a bulking phase was another huge driver that helped me cure my binge eating disorder. And I think that's something that if you guys are listening to this and you've been depriving yourself for a long time and you're scared to gain weight, and you're going through binge eating disorder right now, I think the thing that you're fearing the most is going to be the thing that's actually going to cure this problem for you. So that's what I recommend you do. I think you take steps towards gaining weight and being comfortable with gaining weight. All in all, I can look back at my experience with binge eating disorder and I can say that it really, confidently was a shitty time in my life, and it's not something that I want to experience again. It causes obviously a lot of physical problems, like you can't just sit there and eat whole boxes of cereal and ice cream without having some physical side effects from that. But the emotional and mental turmoil that it put me under was really extreme. And it's not something that I wish to experience again. And I hope that if you are watching this and you are experiencing it, or you have experienced it, I hope that you have the courage to either contact me or leave a comment to help others that are going through this, that they can, get through it. There's light on the other end of the tunnel. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask, send a message, leave a comment. I will be happy to respond to you as soon as I can. And as always, take care of yourself.